Welcome to Roaring Fork Wellness Weekly Podcast, where we strive to bring you options and resources to live a healthy and fulfilling lifestyle in the Roaring Fork Valley and surrounding areas. I'm Kimberly Henrie. You can learn more about Roaring Fork Wellness at www.rfwellness.com. This episode of Roaring Fork Wellness Weekly is brought to you by Glenwood Moms for Moms, a social network for local moms providing a gift for the motherhood journey through connection, information, support, and inspiration. Join for free today and spread the word to all your mom friends from pregnancy to grandmotherhood at www.glenwoodmomsformoms.com. And before we bring our guest into the conversation, I want to remind you that the 4th Annual Health and Wellness Expo is coming up. You can get more information at www.rfwellness.com. Just click on the link for the Health and Wellness Expo. And that's happening Saturday, April 25th at the Ramada Inn in Glenwood Springs. If you want to be an exhibitor at that event, we are currently accepting registrations for that. You can get all the details there at the website. If you just want to come check it out, there will be a multitude of exhibitors, products, services, seminars, and workshops, all to help you live a healthier, more exciting and fulfilled life in the Roaring Fork Valley. And now it's my pleasure to introduce somebody who's new to me in the Valley and apparently new to the Valley. I'm really excited to get to know him a little bit better. I have with me on the line Bryan Thomas from Life Fuel Wellness. Bryan, welcome.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be on your show.
It's so exciting to get some fresh blood in the Valley. There's a lot of great folks, but it's always fun to have somebody bring something new in and share with us. So tell us about Life Fuel Wellness. What is that? What do you do?
So Life Fuel Wellness is my wellness and fitness consulting company. I actually have gone through several transformations in life myself, and I've made it my point to help other people bridge the gap between what they want to do and where they're at now. And I take an approach that's somewhat different in that I really try and get the minimum effective dose necessary to get those changes. And a lot of times you'll hear people say it's a matter of eating less and moving more to lose weight. But when that is tried and doesn't work, other approaches need to be taken, and that's where I come in. Okay,
so that's kind of, as a trainer myself, that's kind of a sticking point for me. It's not always just as simple as move more and eat less. There are some other things. So tell us, do you mind delving in a little bit to your personal journey and kind of walk us through what you experienced?
Absolutely, and I'm glad you asked. And this is something I really try and share with everybody who has the patience to listen. And so when I graduated from my National Personal Training Institute education, I went out into the world as a personal trainer that thought he knew everything. And here I was trying to follow the normal guidelines of low fat, high carb, and really realized that over time that wasn't getting me where I wanted to be. So I just dug my heels in and kept with the program because that's what I was educated with. And at one point I was at a family reunion, and I walked up, and my brother, who was there, he's a young little whippersnapper and a smart aleck, and he pointed out that my shorts were riding up the middle of my thighs.
Ouch!
And I was obese. I was overweight. I was 264.5 pounds at my highest, and at that point, I realized that something had to change. And once I got past being angry and upset at him, I realized that the problem was how I was approaching things. Mm-hmm. And here I was following the advice I was given by people who I trusted. And at that point, I really dug into the literature and the science behind what causes weight gain and what causes weight loss. And ever since then, my life changed, and I have since lost over 80 pounds. And I am trying to share that with everybody who is willing to listen, because it is such a powerful feeling when you set a goal and achieve it.
Can you expand a little bit? I know we want to talk about some of the services and the exciting training programs that you've got going on here in the Valley, but I would love it if you could share a little bit more information about what's different than the calories in, calories out method that you offer or that you've experienced.
Yeah, so with the calories in, calories out method, it essentially puts all calories on a level playing field. Mm-hmm. And if that's the case, then chicken breast is going to have the same effect for you as table sugar if you ate the isocalorically equal amount of them. But we both know when I say that, it sounds outlandish, right? So what I look at is more than just what the calorie content of food is, but the effect that food has on your body. And when you change the environment within your body and how that food is processed, you're going to end up with a different outcome. And if somebody is battling a lot of issues health-wise, they're going to have a higher state of inflammation. They're going to have potential digestive issues. They're going to have a disrupted gut microbiome. They're going to have all sorts of cholesterol problems. And all of that's going to change how their body responds to the same food that a healthy person might eat of the same quantity and the same amount. So finding those problems, correcting those issues, and really making a bio-individualized approach for each person as opposed to taking the one-size-fits-all model is really what separates success from failure.
And what does that look like when you're working with someone? Do you meet them on a regular basis? Do you meet them in their home, in a facility?
I can meet them essentially anywhere, anytime, that provided I don't have another appointment with. But at that point, I can meet them coffee shops, restaurants, at their house, over the phone, Skype, you name it. I'm happy to help somebody, whatever's convenient for them. And generally we'll meet at least one time as a consultation. At that point, we'll kind of delve more into their current situation, what they've done in the past, what they've dealt with in the past, and where they want to go. And then from there, I put together a program specifically for them. And then we meet on a regular basis after that, usually every 2 weeks or so. And from there, we really try and fine-tune that generic-based program for them as an individual. So if that means that they need more of something or less of something, then we go that route.
And just to reiterate, your background is pretty stealthy. You went to a pretty healthy personal training institute versus a weekend course in personal training. So you've got a very strong background there. And you also did some integrative nutrition training, is that right?
Yes. I went to the National Personal Training Institute. That was a one-year program with over 500 hours of nutrition experience. And I'm currently enrolled in the Institute of Integrative Nutrition, which is another one-year program that delves into all sorts of dietary theories, whether it's Ayurvedic, Paleo, Atkins, zone diet, vegan, vegetarian, body ecology. It covers all of these different aspects of dietary theory and gives you exposure to that so that when it comes to the individual, you have an arsenal of options to give to them. Mm-hmm. So it's not just this one-size-fits-all model that you see a lot of things like paleo, for example, turning into. And I like paleo as far as a lot of concepts are concerned, but that may not be the right diet for somebody. And when we become dogmatic about our approach to nutrition or health or exercise, you really shortchange the possibilities of reaching somebody on a personal level.
That's so refreshing to hear. And I think I really wanted to kind of steer us toward letting folks know that there's a difference in the quality of trainers that you work with or professionals that you work with. And it's really important to kind of look at the credentials of someone who wants to step up and help you with your physical fitness or your nutrition or your weight loss.
Absolutely. I think the credentials and the quality of trainer are imperative to your success. If you're going to use a personal trainer, and I recommend that, not because I am one, but because there's too many loopholes or too many pitfalls that can come with not having the proper guidance, that you can end up wasting a lot of time, wasting a lot of money, or wasting a lot of potential injuries that you didn't need to get because the path that you chose might not have been right for you. And so having a good, solid coaching foundation or that personal training foundation to help you get to that point you want to be is absolutely imperative. It'll really shortcut the success.
Now, we've kind of covered the basics, and I want to turn to what seems to be one of maybe your new passions or an old passion maybe is a method of training using kettlebells. Can you tell me a little bit about what they are and how you got into it?
Absolutely. One of the benefits of the school that I attended originally, called the National Personal Training Institute, or I'll just call it NPTI for short, was exposure to all sorts of different modalities of training, whether it was Pilates or yoga or exercise machines or stability training, or in this case, kettlebell training. I really got well versed in a lot of those things, but I fell in love with kettlebell training because of its versatility. At the time when I was in school, didn't really appreciate them for what they were and what they're capable of until I got a little bit older and smarter and revisited the idea of using these as a tool for metabolically conditioning your body to become a fat-burning machine. And once I looked into the research on that, I realized that kettlebells offer a great deal of versatility beyond just simply cardiovascular benefits. And ever since then, I've really just been in love with these things as far as how my body has changed, whether it's strength, mobility, conditioning, flexibility, stability, balance. I've had improvements across the board by incorporating kettlebell training into my routine.
So I've used kettlebells myself and with some of my clients, but for me, it's kind of that tip of the iceberg thing that probably you experienced at school where you know they're there and look, we could swing them over our head, do a kettlebell swing, or use them in some different traditional exercises in place of dumbbells. For those who have not experienced kettlebells, can you explain what they are and how they're used?
So if you can envision a big iron cannonball with a handle on it, that is a kettlebell. And they come in various sizes, various weights, and the main exercise, and you mentioned this, was the kettlebell swing. And what's interesting about the kettlebell swing is that there's a certain rhythmic capacity to it, and there's variations on that. As you mentioned, the overhead swing, or what's known as the American swing, or there's a more traditional Russian-style swing, or there's what's called the hard-style swing. And in those different variations, you have different degrees of activation of your body, but it's a very ballistic movement. And you're essentially carrying that kettlebell between your legs and behind you, and then exploding with your hips to allow that kettlebell to come forward while you're holding on to it. And that creates a whole degree of momentum and a whole degree of inertia that your body and your core has to sustain. And then as that gravity kicks in and pulls that kettlebell back down, you wind it back up again and explode with those hips. And in that process, you get a lot of activation through the glutes, the hamstrings, the quadriceps. Your core activation is through the roof, and you get a great cardiovascular benefit from that. But what's even more interesting is when you take that swing and translate that hip power to all sorts of other avenues of exercise. You can take that and carry it with you to running faster. You can take that and cycle better. You can take that and become a better golfer. You can take that and improve all sorts of aspects of your life. There's been studies showing that, and the study I'm citing is Vorapiev in 1983. And this study actually looked at two different groups of college students. And one was given their normal PT exam of running and a broad jump and pull-ups, and they trained specifically in that. The other group did not practice that event at all. In fact, they only trained with kettlebells. And the group that only trained with kettlebells actually saw a greater improvement in those events without training them than the group that trained them specifically.
Do you suppose, because of the uniqueness of the functional training that kettlebell offers, do you suppose that's why you got to see those results?
I do, and I think it's because kettlebell training activates your musculature in more than just a static one rep max kind of approach to things like, say, bench press or squat, where you're really only moving in that one plane of motion and you're really only working at a very constant intensity. But because you can use kettlebells in that ballistic nature of things like the swing, or you can do more Olympic lifts like the snatch with a kettlebell in a very safe method, actually, compared to doing a barbell snatch. And then you can do things like presses. You can do things like squats. You can do deadlifts. The arsenal of exercises you have access to with kettlebell training is really almost unrivaled for just that one single piece of equipment.
So in your opinion, because it can sound kind of scary, especially when you're using words like ballistic and Olympic, who's kettlebell training appropriate for?
Kettlebell training is actually picking up a lot of popularity with chiropractors and physical therapists as well. Because of the offset nature of the handle and the weight disbursement, it actually can really stimulate a lot of rotator cuff rehabilitation or even basic leg and knee motivation as well because of the shape of the kettlebell itself. So from that standpoint, those kind of applications are going to use a less ballistic nature and a less explosive and Olympic lifting type of platform. But because of that weight distribution, depending on how you use it, it's got a lot of merit for a lot of situations. In injury rehabilitation, because you have that offset weight compared to something like a dumbbell, which is centered directly over your hand, if you were to do a shoulder press, for example,
right,
then you have a different degree of activation with that same amount of weight with a kettlebell because of how that weight sits differently. And so if somebody's looking to prevent an injury, incorporating that into your normal routine is tremendous. Making it the mainstay of your routine has merit too. If somebody has a lot of issues with joint pain, it's probably something where you definitely want to have a real qualified coach show you how to do things properly.
Mm-hmm. So you wouldn't want to just walk into an open class and pick up kettlebells and start training?
Not unless somebody's going to be able to focus on you specifically and make
Sure.
sure your form is dialed in.
Sure. And that being said, what are the risks involved with this type of training?
The risks that are involved are you're going to become addicted to them. You're going to see exceptionally great results with them, and it's a risk that you're going to have to run because your friends are going to look at you and say, "What happened? Are you taking steroids?" No, I'm kidding. As far as the risks are concerned, and this is where it's really important to have that coaching, kettlebell training has a somewhat steeper learning curve than other modalities of training. It's not necessarily something where you can just pick it up off of YouTube University or grab a kettlebell that you see in the gym and be an expert at it. It takes a lot of practice. And as far as kettlebell training, and I take this approach with exercise as a whole for that matter, I really emphasize with my clients the importance of perfection because there's so many moving parts involved with these exercises because nearly every one of them, if you're doing it right, will be a total body exercise. And so you have a lot of links in that chain that need to be connected properly for you to be safe. So if you're going to have the kettlebell training as part of your regimen, you need to make sure that your form is spot on because if you're practicing improper form, you're going to ingrain poor motor patterns, you're going to ingrain poor neurological activation, and that's going to carry with you outside of the training time. And that's where your risks run, is if you have poor training in your regimen, it's going to follow you.
So you wouldn't recommend that somebody just go and pick up a bunch of kettlebells and start training. If they're in generally good health, they can start in a class, and if they have some health issues, perhaps work with a coach.
Exactly. And even if they really want to kickstart it or they have a specific goal, there are exercises that have more carryover to sport-specific applications. If you're trying to improve your cycling time or your golf swing, then kettlebell training definitely has applications that can work for that, but it definitely requires some guidance to get you to that point specifically.
So you can get very specific with what you want to get out of it. And you talked about cardiovascular benefits, so I would assume that that would include some fat burning benefits.
Absolutely.
Can you talk
about that?
And
this is my bread and wonderful, delicious butter, if you will. And so
I'm not sure that's appropriate. No, I'm just kidding.
It's my pun, my tongue-in-cheek pun. And as far as fat burning is concerned, what really fascinates me about kettlebell training is you can go to a gym that has a good coach with these, or you can go to somebody who's familiar with these, and they can put you through what is called a kettlebell complex. And what's really nice about a kettlebell complex is it's a series of exercises in succession for a set period of time. And you can use a time as a finishing goal, or you can use a rep range as a finishing goal for a set number of reps on something. But the main thing that happens when you're going from exercise to exercise to exercise to exercise, and the kettlebell is very complementary to that because of its shape and because of how you would transition from one exercise to the next. You can go from something like a swing into a clean, into a press, into a squat, into a windmill, into a Turkish get-up, all sorts of exercises that you could do with these kettlebells without ever setting that kettlebell down. And when you get to that point conditioning-wise, and you're in that range of cardiovascular excitement, your VO2 max will improve, your metabolic efficiency will improve. There was a study published in the Journal of Strength and Conditioning in 2014 that found that the post-workout hormonal response to kettlebell training saw a great increase in testosterone and growth hormone following kettlebell training as the main modality of training. And so the hormonal response that you get from that type of finishing aspect to your workout, or even making your entire workout a kettlebell complex, it's a tremendous hormonal benefit to your body. And back to the idea of your hormonal environment dictating your health and well-being, or at least being a big part of that, when you start to apply the stimulus to get you the hormonal environment you want, your results will amplify several times over.
How does kettlebell training compare to something like that's really big right now, like CrossFit?
CrossFit is very similar in the sense that there's a lot of different exercises you do in CrossFit, and there's a lot of different exercises you do in kettlebell training. What I prefer kettlebell training for compared to things like CrossFit is that CrossFit actually has a very unique approach to kettlebell training, and their emphasis is the American swing, for example, or the overhead swing. Mm-hmm. The problem with that type of swing is that because you're taking that kettlebell overhead versus shoulder height as you would with a Russian or hardstyle swing, mm-hmm. is you actually, if that person does not have adequate thoracic or shoulder mobility, mm-hmm. they can really put a lot of stress on their shoulder joints. Not to mention, the focus of that swing should be hip drive and that explosive power from your hips and the connection between your upper body and your lower body. And that American swing puts a lot of people who aren't prepared for it into a position where their shoulders have to pick up that slack. And those shoulders are very, very finite muscle fibers that can hold only so much work capacity in them relative to your glutes, your quads, and your hamstrings. So when that emphasis changes, it really puts your body in a stressful position if you're not ready for it. And as far as workout design is concerned, CrossFit tends to have a lot of really good ideas as far as exposing people to exercises and types of lifts that they wouldn't necessarily do. But things like a snatch, for example, you'll never see that performed for reps in the Olympics. You'll never see that performed for reps by people who train for the Olympics. They're very glycolytically and phosphocreatine emphasized versus something that's going to be long endurance VO2 max oriented. And so with kettlebell training, you do some of those similar movements, but with the kettlebell, and especially if you're only moving one at a time, that snatch can be performed very easily and safely for reps. But trying to set that barbell down from above your head and pick it up again and lift it and do that for reps is very, very dangerous. There was actually just a CrossFit coach in Inglewood, Colorado, who unfortunately dropped the barbell on his lower spine and severed his spinal cord doing a CrossFit workout because of that type of programming. And I hope he can walk again. I really do. But from last I heard, the outlook was not good.
Oh, I hate to hear those stories. Well, I think we've got a really good picture of the range of work you can do with kettlebells, from rehab and even a deconditioned client coming in and beginning a program, all the way to somebody who's an athlete or a hardcore weightlifter can get a benefit.
Absolutely. And whether your sport is cardiovascular-based or whether your sport is strength-based, having that foundation of being able to tap into those other muscle fibers and connect your upper and lower body and being able to really use your core when you need it, it comes down to more than just laying on the ground and doing crunches. It comes down to more than just running on a treadmill. I mean, being able to improve all those aspects by setting a strong foundation, a strong base, that's what holds up things like the pyramids and the Eiffel Tower. is that really strong base. So pigeonholing yourself as far as your training modality is concerned, it's really going to hold you back as far as your total and absolute optimal potential.
Awesome. I want to be the Eiffel Tower.
Don't we all?
Bryan, thank you so much. I hope that we have the opportunity to chat again. And I know that you're teaching some classes and you're doing some one-on-one training. Can we give out your website address so that folks can find you and get more information?
Absolutely. My website is lifefuelwellness.com. That's one word, lifefuelwellness.com. And you can also find me on Facebook and Twitter. My Facebook is Life Fuel Wellness, and my Twitter handle is Find Your Fuel.
Find Your Fuel? Awesome.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you so much, and I hope that you'll have much success here. Welcome to the Valley. You've been here for almost a year, if I understand correctly.
Coming up on a year very fast, and I'm honored to be here. I'm happy to be here, and thank you so much for having me on your show.
Have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
Join us again next time for Roaring Fork Wellness Weekly, and find us online at www.rfwellness.com.